You shipped my feature. Features have a way of converging. You know how it goes. Sure, down to the phrasing. I'm 33 and I was laid off in February. Mass layoff, the kind where the email goes out at 6:47 in the morning on a Thursday and the Slack access goes dark before you've finished reading it. My wife, Maya, had come back from maternity leave about 4 months before that, back to a part-time arrangement. And childcare in this city costs what it costs, which is to say, it costs a number I still can't say out loud without my jaw doing something involuntary. 2 offers came in the same week in June, which felt like relief, and then immediately felt like something more complicated than relief. The first offer was large enterprise software, fully remote, 155, good benefits. The second was a startup, Series B, 115 plus equity, described the way people always describe startup equity. Carefully and with a lot of conditional phrasing, and 45 minutes each way through the part of the highway where traffic stacks up around the bridge no matter what time you leave. By the point I was comparing these 2 offers, I had already been through 6 rounds with the startup. The final round was a live product exercise, 2 hours scheduled, 3.5 hours actual. It was me, the CEO, and the engineering lead, Daniel, 38, the kind of technically fluent person who can make you feel like you're co-thinking with someone rather than being evaluated. They told me in the 3rd round that Daniel and I would be daily collaborators, which is partly why I talked about the architecture the way I did, with the specificity I did, like I was onboarding myself into a team that was about to be my team. So when you say front-loaded, you mean before they've even picked a preference, or after the first action? Before. The proof has to land before they've committed to anything. Otherwise, it reads as reassurance rather than invitation. Right, yeah. And the compression piece, are you collapsing steps or are you reordering them? Both, depending on the cohort, but mostly collapsing. The reorder alone doesn't move the number enough. We've been sitting on something close to this for a while and it keeps getting deprioritized. Yeah, I want to keep pulling on this. They gave me a prompt. They were struggling with activation rates. New users weren't reaching the core value moment. It's a genuinely interesting problem, and I had thought about it specifically in a lot of detail for most of the last 2 years at my previous job where we had almost the identical issue. So I just talked. I walked them through this onboarding architecture I'd been developing in my head, a sequenced activation model that front-loaded social proof and compressed the steps between sign-up and the first meaningful action. Daniel started asking questions that were really good, the kind where you can tell the person is genuinely engaging rather than just waiting for you to finish. And we went back and forth, and it spilled 40 minutes past when it was supposed to end and nobody mentioned stopping. I drove home thinking the conversation with Daniel specifically had felt like talking to someone I could work with for a long time.
Did they say anything specific or was it just the standard thing?
Standard thing.
Okay, I mean, the other one is better anyway, right? Genuinely.
Yeah, probably.
You don't sound like you think so.
No, I do. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The rejection email came 6 days later. Standard language, shift in hiring priorities, competitive pool, wishes for success in my search. I read it once, then put my phone face down on the kitchen counter and made coffee I didn't drink. I went back to the enterprise process, which was already in final stages, and kept moving. 3 weeks after that, a colleague, someone I'd worked with 2 jobs ago, loosely connected, the kind of LinkedIn connection that mostly exists as a name, forwarded me something with no message, just a link. I was sitting in the daycare parking lot at the time, engine off, windows up, my phone screen auto-dimming because I'd been still too long. You shipped my feature. Features have a way of converging, you know how it goes. Sure, down to the phrasing.
Who sent you this?
Someone from the old job, doesn't matter.
Okay, but what does it actually say?
The link was the startup's LinkedIn page. A product launch announcement. A new feature, Live, being introduced as a step change in how new users experience the product. The feature was described in a brief paragraph with a few specific phrases. Compressed activation path, front-loaded social proof integration, value moment sequencing, and it was credited to the product and engineering team. Daniel's name was there, under a header that said, Product Innovation, with a headshot and a quote. I read it twice. The screen dimmed again, and I pressed the side button to keep it lit.
Can you not look at it again right now?
I'm not doing anything with it.
I know you're not. That's not what I said.
It's possible they got there on their own. I know that.
But you took the screenshot.
Yeah. The post was from 9 days ago, which meant the feature had probably been in development for weeks before that. I kept trying to think whether the phrases were standard phrases, the kind that any product person would use when describing an activation problem, because there are only so many ways to describe it, which is true, that is genuinely true. And I also kept thinking about the 40 minutes past the scheduled end time when Daniel was asking me questions that were really good. I couldn't say with certainty. Any competent product team working on activation rates was going to land somewhere in the same space. The logic leads you there, the data leads you there. I know that in a way that is rational and well-reasoned, and does not stop the thought from cycling back around every time I almost convince myself to leave it alone. At some point, I took a screenshot without really deciding to, the way you do something with your hands before your brain has caught up on whether it was a good idea. I found a lawyer, briefly, the way you find a lawyer when you're not sure you need one. Reading forum posts at 11:30 at night, understanding just enough to understand how much I didn't know. Ideas aren't protectable. Conversations aren't contracts. The phrase shift in hiring priorities is unactionable, which I'd known before I looked it up. I closed the tabs. I accepted the enterprise offer the following Monday. The email came back in under an hour with a confirmation and an onboarding date, and the speed of it felt somehow both reassuring and deflating. Maya was pleased, or relieved, which looked like pleasure that morning over coffee, and she doesn't know about the LinkedIn post. She knows the startup passed, she knows I was disappointed, and those things are true, and are also not the whole story. I still have the screenshot on my phone. Sometimes I come across it while scrolling for something else and I keep scrolling. Other times I open it and read it again. The specific phrases, Daniel's name under the header, his headshot, the way he's smiling the way people smile in professional photos. Slightly, but not too much. I know what he looks like from 3.5 hours of video calls. I know the way he pauses before answering a hard question. The feature is still live on their website. I checked this morning.